Good evening. My name's Councillor Corinna Smart, and I'm the Chair of the Planning Committee. I'd like to welcome those of you who are viewing over the internet. Right, just to let you know, when you switch your mic on, can you just delay slightly before speaking, because the cameras take a little bit of time to change from where they're looking at the moment, i.e. on me, and then if I called one of you, press the button and then wait a little bit and then speak, and we'll see how that goes tonight. We'll be looking back at the recording afterwards to see if that works better. There was a little bit of confusion last time. Okay, apologies for absence. We have one from Councillor Tony Lukey. I'd like to go through the declarations of interest under the Town Planning Code of Practice or any other communications from members. Can I see, right, Councillor John Todd.
Yeah, good evening, Chair. Item 2, the Duke's Meadow matter, I'm involved in that project, so I propose to withdraw from the meeting for that item.
Thank you. Councillor Sidhu.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 4, that's my property and I will be abstaining.
Thank you. Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair. I have received some emails about item 5 and 6.
I suspect on item 5 that we've all had at least one email. Came to everybody, looks like everybody. Yeah, that's everybody's received an email on item 5. And some people may have had something on item 6. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, so we now go to the minutes of the meeting held. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Vikram Guru.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick note. I know you're privy to this, but I got an email about item number 4, the triangle site on New Road. Sorry, I think it's the one about the garages where we got an addendum. Item number 5. Item number 5, which I shared with the officer and with yourself.
No, that's exactly what everyone's been saying. They were nodding in agreement to that one. That's exactly that one. It was an email from a resident that was dealt with by the planning officer. Yeah, and you got copied in. Yes, that's fine. No problem. I think that's everything. Yep, okay. Right. So let's move to the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of June. They're pages 4 to 6, and I'd like to see, for accuracy first, Councillor John Todd, you're moving accuracy. Thank you. That's fine. Everyone agreed? Thank you. Are there any matters arising from those minutes? Can't see any. Okay, thank you. And then minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of June 2021, pages 7 to 9. I'd just like to point out that the declaration of interest at the beginning, where Councillor Guy Lambert said that he had brokered a meeting online with both sides of the discussion, and Councillor Mel Collins said he was attending, and I did say me too, but he got lost in, I'm afraid, a lot of people talking at the same time. So Wendy missed that. So she's now got that, and I'm just letting you all know that I was in that meeting as well. Okay. So any other items for accuracy on that meeting? Can't see anybody. Okay, that's fine. So can I have somebody just move those? Thank you. Great, thank you very much. And are there any matters arising from that? No, can't see any. Okay, thank you all very much for that. Okay, moving on. Now, we don't have any objectors tonight. So therefore, there are no developers to speak either. And so we're going to move on to the planning officers will give the substantial report, and then it'll be open to questions from members, and then any comments that members would like to make after that. So over, first of all, to Matthew for garage blocks rear of 17 Ashford Road, Feltham, which are pages 10 to 46. And also, there's quite a few addendum items in here, which are on the addendum, which hopefully you've all been able to see. And again, we'd like to apologise for the tortuous way that members were asked to try and find this online. Wendy solved it by sending a PDF out, thankfully suggested by Councillor John Todd. And I hope that if IT are going to try and see if they can sort out a proper link that saves us having to do this. But if they can't do that by next meeting, there'll be another PDF sent to everybody when the addendum is published. Okay, so that you shouldn't have any trouble. Okay, so over to Matthew, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Rees. I'm the Head of Development Management. So this is an application, we're calling it Behind 17 Ashford Road, Feltham, but I'll move on to the site plan to show exactly what we're looking at the moment. This is a block of 4 garages that are located to the rear of Ashford Road, bordered by 3 other roads, so Chertsey Road, Shelston Avenue and Walton Gardens on each side. I'll move through and show you some pictures shortly, but yeah, just to reiterate that's the site, and it's worth taking a bit of time just to have a look at where the properties surrounding the site are in relation to the proposed development, because that's I believe one thing that we're going to be looking at in a bit more detail later. These are site photos of access to the site. So the one on the left is looking from within the site back out towards Ashford Road, showing you the access pathway. The photograph on the left is from Ashford Road, obviously looking back into the site. And then you are looking at the garages that would be removed as part of this scheme. More pictures of garages. Moving on, I'll linger on this slide slightly again, if that's okay. So you are now looking at the proposed footprint of the development. So this is 10 new units within a building over 2 stories, all of them affordable units at London affordable rent levels. There's one wheelchair accessible unit in there as well, but you can see that they're arranged in an L shape to the southern end of the site, southwestern side of the site. So it's worth having a look at those properties on Chertsey Road. Those properties, it's Walton Gardens just to the south. Just checking how they are in relation to those properties, because I think that's been the reason for a number of concerns being raised. Now a little bit more detail. So this is a proposed ground floor plan. Again, you're looking at the footprint of the properties. There's 2 houses, which are the light blue ones to the top left and bottom right hand side, and then 8 flats within the property over 2 floors. You can see the communal amenity space that's on the more central upper right hand side of that plan. The parking spaces above that, and then there's some communal / private amenity space surrounding it to the left and the bottom of that drawing. First floor plan and roof plan, not showing you a huge amount extra, but those are the extra 4 flats there on the first floor level. You can see that there's balconies on the south and western side of these properties, so that's facing towards the properties that surround the site. And then a roof plan showing a little bit about what the roof looks like and the accessible flat roof element of the scheme, but there's going to be a condition restricting access to that, so that's not proposed as amenity space for this proposal. Elevations, so the bottom one is looking at it from the rear, so that is from the Walton Gardens, the southern side of the site. Then the front elevation is from within the garage site itself, as it currently is. 2-story developments, you're looking at some gable ends and balconies. It's brickwork for elevations with slate roof. And a little bit more detail of the elevations. There's some of the detailing that's proposed at the roof level and around the window surrounds. And then that's what they would look like from within the parking area itself. And then finally, this is a plan showing, again, it gives you a bit more of an idea of how the dwellings relate to the surrounding area. So no speakers tonight, but there was, I forget the number of representations, sorry, it's in the application drawings, but I think there's like a 70 or 80 signature petition as well. So it's fair to say there were some reasonably significant concerns about the proposed scheme. Some of them are to do with access issues. We've been over this a number of times before. Access issues are between the landowner and the owners of the property surround it. What we do tonight won't compromise any access to the site. It's a civil matter between 2 parties. Overlooking loss of privacy is an issue that we looked at in some detail. So I'll flick through to the first floor plan. You'll see there's balconies at first floor level that have the potential to look into Severn and Western properties. So we're proposing a condition to have those as having screens across them so you can't see out from those balconies into neighbouring properties. And then you'll see windows again, looking south, looking west, potential for overlooking into dwellings on those sides. We're proposing a mixture of obscure glazing or design features to be imposed as part of a condition, just to make sure that you either can't see out of the window, or in circumstances where it's a single window for a habitable room, like a bedroom window, you have a very oblique outlook to the side. You can't see straight into neighbours' gardens. So we believe that we've had that covered via planning condition, and we believe it's doable as part of this application. So broadly, in conclusion, it is a slightly constrained site. Garages are being removed, but we have a transport statement suggesting that there's capacity in the area to accommodate any extra vehicles that might overspill. And we believe we can control loss of privacy and outlook. Again, if I could draw attention to the addendum, there's a table in there for 4 of the units. So it's only referring to 4 units that we believe are incorrectly represented within the bulk of the original report. And just some amendments to planning conditions. So not anything significant I need to relate to at this point. And then the final thing is that there was a typo in the actual committee report, suggesting it was a council-owned scheme that's being presented in front of you. It's not a council-owned scheme. It's from a residence. It's from the Sapphire Housing Group. So it is a council site, but it's not an application that's submitted by us. But just to reiterate, these are affordable units. They're at London affordable rent levels. So if it's okay, I'll leave the presentation at that. I'll leave this slide in front of you and then invite any questions.
Okay, questions. I have questions at the moment from Councillor Alan Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Matthew. Could you tell us first off why there is no representative from Sapphire here tonight to give us their side of it, their plans, their vision?
Sorry, they are actually here.
Oh, are they?
Yes.
Oh.
Could you just wave?
Oh, there they
But
are.
they're not speaking.
Nice to see you.
Because obviously there's no objector, so they won't be here to speak.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll bear that in mind. Thank you. One of the big issues in this area, I'm a ward member, and I've often been down there, is flooding and drainage off the Ashford Road. The drains are often blocked there, the camber of the road, the camber of the land, which directly feeds onto the garage area, has been a cause for some concern for many years. 7.24 page 20 states that it doesn't comply, the current plan, with the London plan, even though condition 9, page 35, seeks to deal with that. And I know we've got something in the addendum, but I'm looking for more clarity on this, and I would rather hope that at this stage, as it comes before the planning committee, we would have had something more specific about the drainage issue, which is of great concern down there, quite apart from the things that you've already mentioned, but that is the main issue. My second point, Matthew, is about 44 garages, 7 are currently let. Do you know how many are actually in use out of the 44? Is it that 7 or are there others? And what is the potential displacement onto Walton Gardens and Shelson Avenue as you see it? Thank you.
Okay, Matthew, you've got to...
I'll answer the drainage point if that's okay, and then are you okay to do the transport? Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to drainage, obviously it's hard surfacing at the moment, and that's potentially causing an issue. What they have to do as part of this planning application is that they have to ensure that sustainable urban drainage systems are included in this scheme that mean that it meets greenfield runoff rates, so essentially the same runoff from the site as it would as if it were grass. So what you would find is that actually there's a net gain as a result of this scheme in terms of drainage in the area, because you're removing an area of tarmac and you're introducing, obviously it's not a grassed area, but there will be drainage attenuation tanks installed around the site to make sure that there's no runoff from the site onto neighbouring properties. So what is missing as part of this application is the detail of the size of those attenuation tanks and where exactly those sustainable energy drainage systems go. So we are satisfied that they can do this. And okay, apologies, because we don't have the detail of that in front of us, but that you will actually see a net improvement on drainage as a result of the scheme were it to be approved tonight.
Sorry, do you want to come back as a supplementary to that, Councillor Mitchell?
Thank you, Chair. Do we know the time scale on that, when we might have that detail?
So there will be a 3-year commencement condition. It will have to be prior to the commencement of development. So it would be within those 3 years. It wouldn't be an unusual situation where if a condition is submitted with further details, we contact yourself, or even you can publicise certain conditions if that's how you'd like to approach the situation. It's not a standard procedure. I'd have to make a note to do so, but we can share that information when it's submitted. Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be a very good idea, Matthew. Okay. So for the second part of his questions, Kieran?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so of the garages, 7 are let, but we don't know what they're currently being used for. Of those 7, 4 are let to people or to addresses that are more than 200 meters away, so they're unlikely to be used regularly for car parking, just due to the distance. And even if they were, it's unlikely to be displaced onto the local roads. Assuming that the 3 that are let to people who live nearby are all used for parking, they have undertaken a parking stress survey to show that those 3 spaces could be accommodated in the surrounding streets, including the 6 cars, I think, that were observed parked outside the garages within the site overnight. So there is capacity on the surrounding streets to deal with the worst case scenario, displaced parking.
You want to come back again?
Yeah, thank
Please
you,
do.
Chair. Just so, is there a number on the potential number of new vehicles in the area due to displacement and the new residents? Or did I miss that?
So in terms of the projected demand for the new residents, I think census data indicates there will be potentially, I think it's 4.72 average car ownership levels for the units, for the proposed units. And considering they're proposing 7 spaces, it probably is more than enough to deal with the projected demand.
Councillor Richard Foote?
Yeah, I'm trying to determine from the site and the pictures on it of whether the site as outlined is all garages, or is it a mixture of garages and current housing in there?
It's all garages currently, Councillor.
All garages,
yeah.
so there are no other houses in there?
No.
So my reason for asking was then moving on to, if it wasn't the case, if we were moving on to the insulation and the controls on environment in there, that we're looking at houses already as a part of the estate, whether or not we can make those applications at the same time. I'm concerned, as you know, that we do a development and it's a development within a site. We do all of the environmental controls in there, but existing houses are not touched, and it seems to be missing an opportunity. But you're telling me that there are no houses that are linked to that particular development or estate?
Yeah, so no existing houses. Within that red line, which is all we can control, there are no additional houses. The houses that we're proposing here are actually carbon neutral. There's no carbon offset fund attached to the scheme, so that's positive.
I'm aware of that. That's why I'm saying I can't really see, because there isn't a sort of plan in there. But I'm just concerned that if there was houses that were linked to it, and you look at, if you then take the whole estate that we're talking about, if we're developing within an estate, then carbon neutral becomes something else, because the rest of the properties are not carbon neutral. So that's what I'm trying to get here. But you're telling me that this is not part of another estate.
I think that's fairly clear, Richard. I think it's fairly clear. There are only garages there. There are no actual. So I think that is not necessarily relevant at this moment. But I think they've picked up on what you're saying. So don't worry. I think that's been noted. Okay. All right, Councillor John Todd.
Yeah, thanks very much. Paragraph 724, please. You're highlighting my ignorance of water supply and drainage. Remind me what attenuate surface water means, and how do swales and basins come into simple drainage, please?
Sorry, Councillor. I mean, that's maybe not perhaps a particularly well put line. Attenuation. I'm struggling with my English there a little bit as well. I mean, we're talking about attenuation tanks below ground, essentially. So we're talking about water running into pits, as it were, and then attenuation tanks below ground level where the water would infiltrate into before being dispersed outside of peak flow.
Okay, it's a wonderful paragraph and I'm very impressed. But the bottom line is, if you read the last few lines, you haven't accepted this scheme. So how can we ensure that my colleague, Councillor Mitchell, has raised, how are they going to mitigate that condition and compliance with the London plan? Do you know yet?
Sorry, I shouldn't belittle the situation. It's not that difficult to build a pit and a tank big enough to collect water at peak flow rates. It's just a case that you've got to do the correct calculations for how much water is going to run off certain areas into this pit, trench, whatever you want to call it, and then into a tank, and then work out how big that pit has to be and how big the tank has to be. So there's a set of calculations that has to be done there, which I believe have actually been done. There's been some disagreement about what runoff would have result from a certain area within the site. So that's where there needs to be that calculation done, and you need to work out how big the attenuation tank has to be as a result.
That's very helpful. My final question, paragraph 722, third line, the sustainability consultant, ETUJ, who briefed them? Was it the developer or LBH?
It's the developer, yeah. So that's not our sustainability consultant who works in planning applications for us, no.
Can you help me? Who within the department has the knowledge of this sort of equipment and construction detail that could, if necessary, test ETUJ's conclusions?
It's not within our department, I'm sorry to say. It's Low Carbon Europe, so we hire a contractor to assess the sustainability statements on our behalf and advise us.
I mean, I'm not being critical of that. And can I ask, it's a learning curve, how often do you hire them?
They work 1 day a week with us. So we have a contract, and they're sent all of the major applications to review on our behalf.
Well, that's very clear, and I'm better informed. It's just the first application we've had with 100%.
It's not. It is actually the first that we've presented in front of you since we've been using the new SAP calculations. So it is possibly, I think it's the first truly carbon neutral under the current SAP calculations that you've had in front of us, yourselves, yeah.
Can I have a supplementary there, please? Yeah. You've alluded to a new formula. Can you give us a couple of sentences brief on that? Is it a softer formula or an easier one, or what?
It is what the difference between SAP 12, which is what we used to use, and SAP 10 is that because the energy taken from the grid is now decarbonized because the grid has got more renewable energy pumped into it, it means that the coefficients that you use, really sorry, I'm not sure how else to speak that.
Keep going.
The coefficients that you use for electricity either being put back into the grid or taken out of the grid. So if you use an air source heat pump, you take electricity from the grid. If you use an air source heat pump, it will be more carbon efficient under SAP 10 because it says that you're taking more green energy from the grid to power your air source heat pumps. If you have solar panels that pump in energy back into the grid, it's SAP 12 was better, the old ones, because it was saying that this new renewable source going into the grid was better, that much better than the fossil fuel heavy grid coming out of it. I really hope that helps because I'm not sure how to explain.
And that's a very, very good answer. I'm better educated. Thanks very much, Chair.
Sorry, I've got Councillor Ajma Gurul, and I've also got Senior Vikram as well. So Councillor Ajma.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about overlooking. You were saying that it will overlook some gardens. I've got an email here from Walton Gardens, I think, and they're saying they will be directly looking into their gardens, some of the balconies and that. I know you said with the windows you're trying to sort out the angles or something, but with the balconies overlooking into people's gardens, how how you can sort that. Are you planning on putting maybe any trees there, fast-growing trees, which might provide some sort of privacy? Because that would be a big issue, won't it?
Yeah, so sorry, I'm showing a slide on the screen. Apologies, it's just behind you. So Walton Gardens is to the south. So to the bottom hand side, on the left hand side of that screen is the first floor plan. So you can see that there are 3 balconies at the bottom of that. Balconies are relatively easy to address because you can put in a screen at the end of the balcony that's 1.8 meters high that you can't see through. So they wouldn't be able to see south into the gardens there. There are some windows there. And we are proposing, in these cases, I think we're just proposing them all to be obscure glazed, because all of the windows that look south are either secondary windows to habitable rooms or they serve a bathroom. So it's not actually too difficult a situation or looking south to ensure that the balconies are screened and the windows you can't see out of. So that's how we'd overcome it.
Councillor, sorry, got a supplementary?
Yeah, I was just going to say the screens. I mean, I suppose if someone's sitting down, you can't see, but if they're standing, they can still look above, can't they?
You do it 1.8 meters high, so that's as tall as me. So you wouldn't be able to see over. I mean, it's designed to prevent casual overlooking. We do it fairly often with schemes that are in quite close proximity to houses. You can't see through them or over them if you're sat or stood on the balcony. So it's a reasonably effective. It is an effective measure for addressing those concerns.
Councillor Vikram Grewal.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Matthew, for the report and the presentation. Just a couple of questions from me. Hopefully they'll be less strenuous than Councillor Todd's ones. So the majority of the casework I get, and I'm sure this is not just mutually exclusive to me, some of my colleagues also get this, is for 2-bedroom house units that can sleep at least 4 people and above, ideally 3+. So I can see 40% of these proposed units will sleep 4 or above. But did we try and negotiate or put together a plan to have more 2- and 3-bedroom units? Well, ideally 3+. I'm glad there's 2 houses. We need more of that, not just flats, but actual houses that are long-term future properties for families that are on the waiting list and what have you. But was there a consideration for more larger units than the amount of units? And the second question, if I could just ask that up front as well, is more about the social infrastructure consequences and assessment. So if you could just bring to light social infrastructure assessment and what came out of that, that would be most appreciated as well, in particular about GP surgeries and spaces and schools. And lastly, I'd just like to thank you and congratulate you on the fact that it's a carbon neutral development. This should be the baseline standard for us going forward to help tackle this climate emergency. So I'll leave it there.
Matthew?
Evening, I'm Pratham Sood from the Affordable Housing Team.
Someone going to take that answer? Yes?
Yes, I will.
Okay,
Pratham
fine.
Sood from the Affordable Housing Team. So in terms of mix, we do have a range on site. It's about, the constraints on site and trying to maximise the amount of housing that we can get as well. And in terms of need, we've got a need for all sizes of houses. So this does sort of cater for it.
Okay, you've got the second question.
Yeah, that's right. I've got that one. Sorry. So in terms of community infrastructure, we have the community infrastructure levy, which is designed to address the matters that you've raised. Although I do have to say that this type of scheme doesn't draw a community infrastructure levy because it's 100% affordable housing. So obviously we've got this structure in place that is designed to ensure that the infrastructure is there for all of these new units. You've just happened to pick one particular scheme that doesn't have to pay this contribution. So in general, when you get new houses put into your area, they would draw this sum, and then from that sum would provide the infrastructure. Sorry, you've picked one here that doesn't give it, but the argument would be the 10 units in themselves aren't going to tip the balance. When you're looking at hundreds of units, of course, you're looking at the balance being tipped at that point, and that is when we can draw the money for the community.
Do you have a supplementary?
Just to say that pretty much addresses why I didn't really see much social infrastructure assessment in the agenda pack. So that's understandable. I would just request that it would be assessed, even if it's just for 10 units, because we can easily see this accumulate various 10-unit spots in a close proximity. So that possibly could be considered going forward. But no other questions from me, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Guy Lambert.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few things, actually. First thing is, I don't really understand the roofs here. What's going to happen on these flat roofs?
Nothing. We're restricting access to the flat roof.
Because somewhere it says where the flat roofs are not amenity space, then people won't be allowed out on them. So it would suggest that some of them will be amenity space.
So all of the, sorry, I'm not sure which part of the report, if it is in there, I apologise, but all of the community, amenity space, private amenity space, that's provided at ground floor level, and there is, and the balcony, sorry, at first level, and there is enough space there to satisfy our standards.
I'm a bit concerned about access. It looks to me very narrow, that access road to put bin lorries up. I've never heard of deterrent paving before. What's deterrent paving when it's at home?
I'm not sure either, to be honest with you. Whereabouts in the report is that?
Guy, could you give a reference for that, please? Just to assist the officers.
It's in the addendum report, right at the start. Paragraph 4.4, additional amendment to plans, inclusion of deterrent paving to prevent parking on the turning head.
Sorry, apologies. I do know the answer to that one. Excuse me, Councillor. So essentially what it is that there's a specified number of parking spaces, and then there's spaces to either side of the parking spaces where we're concerned that someone else might park a car and then you can't turn within the site because there's a car parked there. So this is a form of paving that they're proposing that would prevent a car putting themselves there and stopping the turning within the sites.
But the issue this is addressing is the fact that the waste people saying we won't.
Excuse me, sorry, I do apologise. I'm just going to adjourn the meeting for a few minutes while because I needed really to have spoken to all of you beforehand that you shouldn't be leaving the room for any purpose. And I just want to hold the meeting now. And when Councillor Sidhu returns, you can carry on asking your questions, Guy. So it's just a quick adjournment, and it's just a case of basically turning our thumbs, I suspect. Okay, I adjourned the meeting then, Councillor Sidhu, because as I said last time, and I will remind you all, please do not leave the room for any reason, just because you may be able to hear through the walls. We have the public perception, and if you do leave the room, you will not be allowed to participate in the meeting, but because I've adjourned it, you will be this time.
Sorry, Chair.
Okay, right. Sorry about that, Councillor Guy Lambert. Would you like to continue?
Yes, I was on the subject of deterrent paving, which, as I understand it, is that the waste people have said, whilst we'll be able to turn the lorry around if people are parked correctly, but we don't think people are going to park correctly based on experience. They never do. And so this idea of deterrent paving, which I've never heard of, has been introduced on the turning head.
Yeah, that's a concern of ours too, just to ensure that the site isn't over providing parking spaces, people parking where they shouldn't be, even for that aspect. So I think our waste and recycling colleagues were happy that in theory all the manoeuvres could take place, bins could be collected, but like you say, anyone parking outside of the bays could obstruct those movements. Through one of the conditions, the parking management plan, which we attached nearly all applications that have a sufficient number of parking spaces, we'd be able to, the applicant would have to propose measures to prevent that happening, and enforcement measures as well, not just the paving that's mentioned. I'm not even sure would that be sufficient, but even stronger measures as well. And not just within the site, we need to ensure that a refuse vehicle can actually access the site. So in theory, it can drive down there, it can actually get into the site. But if people are parking on street in such a way that they prevent that, then we're going to have to get potentially double yellow lines to ensure that a refuse vehicle can still enter the site and turn and leave in forward gear.
I remain a bit worried. I think that access looks very restricted to me for a large bin lorry, and I'm not convinced that experience tells us you can put triple yellow lines, and they'll still park on them. So it worries me, but there's not probably a lot we can do about it. The final thing is, we talk about these things on the obscure vision from the balconies. What's to stop people just saying, I don't like that, I'm going to take it out?
The planning condition would require them to retain it in perpetuity. And yeah, we'd be relying on the standard enforcement system for if a neighbour notices that it's been taken out and people can see out of it and they can see into it, then we'd have to send an enforcement officer down and ensure that it's put back in place.
A quick one from me, Matthew, is the housing association that's actually putting this together, which is not the council, which was a bit confusing at one stage. Have they do not have a management plan to actually ensure that people who are illegally parking and people who are doing various nefarious things to take stuff down, like the screens, etc., should they not be able to do that themselves as a part of their management of that site?
You'd expect them to do so, but within the format of this meeting, you'd obviously want some controls on behalf of the council at the same time, hence the planning conditions.
Yeah, I'm aware they're here. That's why I'm saying it, because I think it's a fairly logical conclusion that they need to be able to do that in order that we are happy with this as a project. Okay, over to comments, please. Right, I've got some comments from. Let me have a look. Have I got any comments for anybody, please? Councillor Guy Lambert.
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment that whenever someone raises the issue that Vikram raised about these being all two-bedders or one-bedders, usually it's, oh yeah, but this is not a suitable place for families, so we can get away with doing one-bedders here. There is no place more suitable for families that I've seen a planning application for than this one. So it's disappointing that it's not all 3-4 bedders.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Vikram Gurul.
Thank you, Chair. Just to thank Councillor Lambert for that comment. That's exactly how I feel. I think it's a fantastic carbon neutral development, but I wish there were more 3-4 bedroom family units there. And I hope that the ones that we see on this committee going forward will have more family units, because that will certainly help with our casework and the needs of the borough and the families on the waiting list. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor John Todd.
Well, if the discussion's finished, I'd like to recommend approval, Chair.
I have approval on the table. I've got a seconder. Councillor Holly Atwood-Hill here. Has seconded that. Okay. Right. Okay, I think it's been moved, seconded, and we'll now take a vote. Can I just see those in favour, please? Could you please show? Okay, those against and abstentions? I've got one abstention. Is that right? Yes. Councillor Alan Mitchell is abstaining, and the rest of the committee has agreed to approve this development. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay, Councillor John Todd is going to leave us. Okay, moving on. Agenda item 6, Duke's Meadow, Dan Mason Drive, the promenade at Riverside Drive and the promenade approach, London W4. Okay, I'm going to pass this over to Leo. Over to you, and we'll have a substantive presentation.
Thank you very much. I'll just set this up. Or are you able to? Have you got it set up? Or it would be easier if you don't mind. I'll just stop sharing that. Sorry,
Sorry, Councillor. Presentation issues. We'll have that with you shortly. And,
I might as well introduce it while it's coming up. So this application is just a minor material amendment to the consented Duke's Meadows redevelopment scheme, which was first approved in 2018 after coming before Planning Committee in late 2017. That consented scheme included a range of changes to the height and design of the existing football pavilion. This current scheme is involving those changes to the football pavilion, a series of extensions and alterations to the rugby hockey clubhouse, a reconfiguration amendment of the playing pitches, and some minor alterations to the car parking provision as were approved. Also proposes some minor changes to the wording of some of the conditions for numbers 14, 15 and 17 to secure amended timescales for road improvements and change from a travel plan being required prior to commencement of the three main buildings before occupation. This amendment is coming before Planning Committee because one element of the proposal constitutes a departure from the development plan, as it is inappropriate development on an area of metropolitan open land. Very special circumstances have been demonstrated which render the development acceptable in officers' view, however, and the remaining parts of the proposal are all considered to be appropriate development within the MOL. If we can't get anything working, I can... perhaps I can, I might be able to remember everything. Sorry about that. Is there a way of doing like split screen on here with some? No, there's not. No. I haven't got the notes on the PowerPoint. No.
Can you turn your mic off, please?
Chair. Hello, Chair. Councillor Smart. Councillor Smart.
Right, are we sorted? Yeah, okay, we're going to have to adjourn this for how long? Do you reckon 5 minutes? 2 minutes? Right, well, this is now adjourned for 2 minutes. So literally 2 minutes. Please do not leave the room further than the back of the room. Okay, sorry about the slight delay there. We now have the presentation. Leo, over to you.
Yes, apologies for that. Yeah, so if we can just go on to the first slide. Kieran, should just be a click. Or There we go. Yeah, so this application concerns the Duke's Meadows estate, which is a 93-hectare piece of open space within the ownership of the council and designated as a sports hub in the local plan. It provides community sporting facilities, including pitches, clubhouses, and car parking for a range of different activities, including rowing, football, hockey, rugby, and cricket. It also contains a large section of public realm, and the majority of the site has a Thames footpath running through it. The whole area is designated as metropolitan open land, which benefits from the same level of protections as greenbelt. And the site has historically had quite poor, very poor public transport accessibility, with the primary vehicular access provided from the junction with Dan Mason Drive and Riverside Drive from the Great Chertsey Road. A pedestrian footbridge is also underway beneath Barnes Railway Bridge, which will improve access to the site. Just move through, so that, as you can see, that's just the existing site, and then just some photographs of the buildings that are going to be demolished. So this, before you, this is a site plan that was approved back in 2018. So that was for the partial redevelopment of this, Duke's Meadows playing fields. The main parts of that approval, which are relevant to this application, I'm not going to go through everything, but those were for the erection of a new single-storey football clubhouse on the playing fields with changing rooms and social coaching spaces, an extension and alterations to the existing rugby clubhouse to create additional changing rooms for rugby and hockey with the first floor groundsman's dwelling, a reconfigured grass pitches for football and rugby, including the provision of 3 new artificial grass pitches with fencing and floodlighting, 2 for football and 1 for rugby. Various alterations to the car parking provision, including the creation of additional car parking spaces and the formation of a new vehicular access onto Dan Mason Drive. And lastly, some wider public realm improvements, including highway access improvements, cycle parking, signage, lighting, and hard and soft landscaping. So the original consent to which the current application relates, that has been implemented within the 3-year commencement period by virtue of one of the parcels, which was just an AGP for the rugby and football club being completed. However, no further development has been completed, been progressed to date. So if we can now move on to, so now this is the proposed site. So with a few annotations about the main changes going on here. So the current proposal seeks to vary the approved plans to achieve the following changes. So if we could just move to, so these are just some detailed site plans of the pitches. Keep going. And then, yeah, so this is the football pavilion. The football pavilion is obviously the crux of this application, because it's the element that constitutes inappropriate development on the metropolitan open land. So this is the approved football pavilion right before you. It's a single-storey structure, as I've mentioned. And then if you just go one on, and then this is the now proposed amended version, which has changes to the height and the design, including a change from being a single-storey to a 2-storey structure, with the dipped roof and a first floor roof terrace. That's a maximum height increase of 3.8 meters. The total ground floor footprint, however, has been reduced by 300 square meters, with a reduced length of 11 meters. And the changes are required basically to have a better segregated social space on the upper level, improved changing facilities, better access for people with varying access requirements. And yeah, so the materials will remain pretty much as approved, except for the additional glazing at the upper floor. So if we move on to the next. So yeah, just some detailed plans. The interior is a lot more legibly laid out and more user friendly than the approved scheme. And if we just move along, and as you can see, this is the upper floor with a better quality clubhouse, more social space for the bar and recreation areas. So that's the football pavilion. Rugby clubhouse, there's a series of changes to the consented extensions and alterations, including a setting back in the main changing room, a small extension to the rear to accommodate a boiler and laundry room, a relocated main entrance to allow installation of a ramp, and various Part M compliant changes internally. There's a total floor area increase of 13 square meters for that one. In addition to that, there's a few changes to the pitches, including the relocation of an improved football artificial grass pitch and the replacement of one AGP or artificial grass pitch for football with a hockey one, a second hockey one. 2 new netball courts would also be created, resulting in the total number of pitches being increased from 13 to 15. Various alterations are proposed to the car parking, which would result in a cumulative increase in 10 car parking spaces and 1 new 12-metre coach parking space. The total provision would therefore be 249 car parking spaces. So just in terms of a bit of analysis, the vast majority of the proposed amendments here, including the rugby club house changes, the car park alterations and the playing pitch amendments, would constitute appropriate development in the Greenbelt or Metropolitan Open Land within the terms of the MPPF, as they would represent the provision of appropriate facilities in connection with an existing sporting use and would preserve the openness of the Greenbelt or Metropolitan Open Land in this case. So these changes have all been assessed in visual amenity, highway and neighbouring amenity terms are considered acceptable, subject to the same safeguarding conditions being imposed as previously. So the principle of those elements is acceptable. The football pavilion, whilst this too is a facility in connection with an existing sporting use, it is considered to be inappropriate development and to fail to preserve the openness of the Metropolitan Open Land because of the increased height and prominence of the structure. The National Planning Policy Framework states that very special circumstances must be demonstrated in cases like this. However, in this case, these circumstances have been demonstrated in the following ways. So despite the 4-metre height increase, obviously the total footprint has been reduced by 300 square meters at ground floor, which helps to lessen the impact on the spatial visual openness of the site. Secondly, the first floor would cover only part of the building, and the design with the extensive glazing would have quite a lightweight appearance, which would reduce the impact further. And thirdly, the revised proposal would provide a more legible, universally accessible and higher quality facility than the consented building, which would foster the more playing of sport at the site. So improvements include extra space for changing rooms, WCs and shower facilities, a more flexible ground floor layout with lockable doors so that they can segregate the space more easily to allow for safeguarding when separate groups are using the facility. There's more generous circulation space and improved provisions for users with varying access requirements, and a more sustainable building with a large solar PV display. So these improvements align with London Plan and local plan intent for high quality sports, community facilities in healthy places, and following receipt of additional justifications and information, this proposal has received the support of Football Foundation and Sport England. So lastly, just to finish off, one particular objection was received during the consultation process, which was about the closure of the railway underpass and the formation of a vehicular access onto Dan Mason Drive. Now, the railway underpass has been closed temporarily while longer term plans are reviewed, and this doesn't form part of the application at hand, and it's a matter for a separate discussion, and it's still under review. So that's the first element. With regard to the vehicular access onto Dan Mason Drive, this has actually been moved further away from the railway tunnel than approved, which should help to mitigate those concerns to some extent. And in any case, this vehicular access was actually approved in the original consent. It's not a new element here. So the principle of this access has already been established. Yeah, there shouldn't be any material concern in that regard. So in summary, the applications are recommended for approval with updated conditions to reflect the documents already discharged and the latest documents received. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. Okay, questions from members? Just looking around. Okay, Councillor Guy Lambert.
I'm just trying to work out whether it's a question or a comment.
Why don't you just say it, and I'll be flexible.
Am I right in thinking? I think I've been trying to work out where all these things happen. I know where nearly all of them happen, but the one that I don't know where it happens is the football clubhouse, which is the most important one. So I know the area very well. So I'm just trying to locate where that's going to be.
Right, so yeah, I think I can help there. So if you can see from this site plan, which Kieran's kindly brought up, it's sort of to the middle of the site. So where there's, it's the top top arrow on the right-hand side.
Leo, could you be helpful and just come to the middle one and point to it somehow with your finger? I mean, oh, good. I've just seen something pointing. Good. There we go.
Oh, you can point there. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's just there. So sort of in the middle, adjacent to the pictures. So it's going to be the main structure on the site, sort of a landmark in a way. Yeah.
And that is going to be accessed from Dan Mason Drive from that sort of gulch that goes down.
Exactly, from the new, there's a vehicular access at that point, and there's car parking along that access road. But ultimately, yeah, it is accessed from Dan Mason Drive.
Okay. So tell me about the vehicular access and what's going to be, because that's a complete eyesore at the moment. Harass fencing falling down, rubbish everywhere. So what are we going to do to improve that?
I think obviously by virtue of all of the wider landscaping and upgrades to the and road improvements, hopefully that sort of situation will be addressed, naturally by the redevelopment of the site. I think obviously that vehicular access, as I said, was a part of the original consent in any case. So it's not a new feature here, and really the level of changes to the roads in this particular minor material amendment are quite limited. It's more just there's a small increase in the car parking provision, and aside from that, it's not a lot has changed.
So are you saying there's going to be car parking adjacent to this football?
There's a car parking area, yes, just to the sort of the northeast of the football pavilion. There's a car parking area. I think you can possibly see it. Yeah, just to that point there where Kieran's pointing out. And then down along the access road coming from Dan Mason Drive, there's car parking along that side, and then yeah.
It's all double yellow lines at the moment down there.
This whole car parking area and access that's all a sort of new element that's not at the site at the moment. So but it was approved as part of the original consent. But it's a new kind of car parking and access area that's not there at the moment.
Has any analysis been done on the impact of all this additional parking on what is already a very busy road?
Yeah, so the original scheme was subjected to a transport assessment that had the trip generation outlined in it. The thing about the trip generation associated with these leisure facilities is it tends to be outside the network peak. So I think it's probably highest in Saturday afternoons and in the evenings when generally traffic on the surrounding roads are lower. So the additional parking spaces at 10 spaces wouldn't significantly increase the trip generation associated with these use.
I mean, I have personally witnessed a queue of 50 cars waiting to get out of Dan Mason Drive onto the A316 on a Saturday. So this is only going to make that worse.
I think the original scheme had proposed maybe 250 parking spaces. So a further 10 spaces, I don't think it would have a severe impact on the transport network. And if we were to refuse it, we would have to demonstrate that it would have a severe impact on the transport network. And TfL have been consulted as well, and they're satisfied with the impact at that junction.
Is that the end of your questions for the moment? Thank you. Okay. Can't see anybody else wanting to have any questions. So let's move on to comments. Sorry, Councillor Vikram Gurul.
Thank you, Chair. Leo, thank you for the presentation. I think it's a fair and reasonable plan for this site to actually increase the sporting activity on the site. Correct me if I'm wrong. And that fits in very well within our local plan and our aspiration to increase sporting activity and needs in the borough. So if it's good enough for Sport England, it's good enough for the Football Foundation, then I'm more than happy to support this application. We saw yesterday, and hopefully we see on Sunday, that football's coming home. So more football on this site means hopefully we could have, like Ealing has Bakary Sanya there, Saka, sorry, there. Maybe from Hounslow one day we'll have a chap in the England football team, and this site could possibly contribute to that. So on that note, thank you for the presentation. I'll be happy to support it when the time comes.
Or a girl, I hope. It's okay. Sorry. Okay. Comment. Sorry, Councillor Guy Lambert.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite concerned about this. I think this is metropolitan open land. It's has been an idyllic rural enclave within the metropolitan area. We're now proposing a 2-story clubhouse with a sort of massive, great glass lantern on its roof to allow people to get drunk, or whatever they want to do in there. It's a road that has lots of problems as it is. It has far too much traffic for a road through a park, which is not adopted and not very well maintained because it's not part of the transport network. I've got real concerns about pressing ahead with something which will increase the pressure on that road, and not really, as far as I can see, address the existing issues that are there, in terms of road maintenance, in terms of poor a poor environment, that these clubs don't contribute anything to. In fact, they make it worse, because a lot of their people park on double yellow lines habitually. They park on the grass verges. Another half a dozen parking spaces won't help that. So personally, I'd like to, if we're going to approve this, I'd like to see lots of conditions about how these sports clubs take some responsibility for management of the local area, because at the moment they are a blight on the landscape in terms of the way that the local landscape is used.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking at the officer conditions that we could ensure that the clubs take responsibility for the parking of their own guys and girls or whoever, coaches as well. And that's not just that, but it's also, I think, something about we are looking, I think, presumably to look at the upkeep of that highway. Well, it's not a highway, I know, but you know what I mean. The Dan Mason Drive is the major road, and we do. And like Guy, I'm often on the other side of it, coming out of the other road, come onto that access, and you often will see a lot of cars still there, because I don't know if it's the traffic lights that need somewhat adjusting. I think it's a bit difficult when you've got an A road going through. But are there conditions that we can add to this?
Yes. So as part of the original consent, there were a number of conditions, including for a car parking management plan for each parcel of the development. So each building would come with a separate car parking management plan, a travel plan as well, also phasing of those two plans. We'd also be asking for details of the roads and the road improvements, like full details of the improvements to those and the pedestrian paths. So yeah, those conditions should hopefully help to address those concerns. I think also just more generally that there are efforts underway to promote more sustainable ways of accessing the site in terms of, with the new pedestrian footbridge over Barnes Railway, and other general improvements in terms of promoting non-single-use car journeys and things like that. So hopefully those should go some way as well to reducing the impact.
Can we have sight of that when those conditions are drawn up? One of the things I often worry about is we say this in a meeting and then these conditions, it may well go ahead and sort it out, but we don't actually see them. So it would be quite a useful thing to have an addendum at some stage when you've actually sorted out those conditions so we can see it, and check that is actually as well as the travel plan and various other things. Yeah.
Yeah, fair concern, because you're relying on us to remember to inform you of the conditions. But yeah, there are two of us here that will note it, and we will also pass it on to the rest of the team. So yes, we will endeavour to do that. Perhaps through communication with you prior to how we actually relay the conditions to everyone, instead of just throwing them out to everyone, because there isn't actually a formal decision-making process after this point. It's informing and then discussing potential amendments if that's okay. So it'd be more of an informal process rather than coming to planning committee for a decision.
So if you're happy, well, or relatively happy, for me to see those conditions actually written down, and I'll find a way of communicating that to the rest of the committee. Would that be acceptable? More acceptable?
I welcome that provision.
Good. Okay. Thank you. I can't see anybody else wants to say anything. Has anyone does anyone want to lay a recommendation to the committee? Thank you. I've got Councillor Mel Collins moving approval. Sorry, I can't hear you, Mel. Subject to the changes and the condition, subject to the conditions, the extra conditions, and also for that extra bit we've just added. Okay, have I got a seconder for that, please?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Vikram Gruel. Seconded that. Okay, so we have approval on the table. Can I just see those in favour? Okay, those against and abstention. So abstention. Right, one abstention. Okay, so that's carried. Okay, there's slight. Okay, now we're moving on. Slight adjournment for another 2 minutes while we get Councillor John Todd back into the meeting. If you could, thank you, Michael, and Councillor Sidhu, if you'd like to go to members. Thank you. Okay, thank you all very much. We're now gathered again together. Matthew, we now move to agenda item 7, 43 Orchard Avenue, Bedfont. Okay, pages 81 to 88. I don't think there's no addendum on that one, is there? No, there's no addendum on that. Okay, Matthew, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it really quick. This is the application property. So if I draw your attention to the porch, because this is an application for a new porch and an external seating area. Now, if I could draw your attention to the porch at the front of the house, which is at the bottom of your screen right now, and the seating area, which is to the top of your screen, towards the center with the red lines next to it. This is a front elevation showing you what the porch looks like. So top left-hand side is a front porch. And if you're looking at the outbuilding now, to the left-hand side of the front elevation, which is at the top left-hand corner, is a covered seating area. We are suggesting that these are not impacting on any neighbours. They're fine in design terms. They comply with our residential extension guidelines. So we're recommending approval.
Thank you. Okay, any questions of the officer? Just quickly looking around. No questions. Any comments, please?
Chair.
Councillor John Todd.
So Chair, I've read the paper very carefully. I think it's very significant the applicant has complied with directions from officers and the LBH. And so I have no hesitation in recommending that we go ahead with this approval.
Sorry, have I got Councillor? Sorry, Councillor. Oh, sorry, I've got you. Sorry, thank you very much. You've got that, Councillor Gary Sidit Gruel. Okay. Did you want to say something, Councillor Vikram Gruel?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to second what Councillor Todd said.
Oh, sorry.
It's absolutely fine. Councillor,
okay, that's fine. Okay, I have approval on the table. Could I see all those in favour? That's all. Thank you. Sorry, those against and any abstentions? I'm just checking because it looked like all. Yes, it's that's approved. Thank you very much. Okay, so okay, so there's no other other business that I've been notified of. The date of the next meeting is the 5th of August. Okay, and welcome you all to that on that night. And hopefully we'll have a trophy to celebrate. Okay, so thank you all very much indeed and thank you very much to the officers for your presentations tonight. Thank you very much.